Greetings, Kerbonauts! This is Kerbal Space Program. I'm Bob Fitch, and this is number 14 of the Gateway Project. In a previous episode, we launched a satellite up to Minmus, and we're out there scanning things and looking for anomalies, and we found one, so now it's time to send a mission to go investigate that anomaly. We are sending a rover to go and explore the surface in an unmanned launch before we go and send, like, Jeb or Bob or Bill to go and investigate. Jebediah was not happy about that, of course. He just wanted to go straight there himself and start looking around, but the others in the staff meeting convinced him to send an unmanned rover before we actually risk Kerbal lives. Speaking of the staff meeting, Bill has returned. He's quite happy that all the orbital debris is gone. And so now he's coming back to the drawing board with us and helping to design things like this Minmus rover that you can see deploying right here, putting out those solar panels so that we don't lose contact or lose power before we get a chance to make it there, burning our way over to Minmus and getting rid of our injection stage. Later in the episode, we will be launching the S0 Truss. This is the first piece of the upper truss segments that will contain all of those solar panels that are so iconic with the ISS in our dimension. And boy, I'm thinking it's gonna be pretty big. Here we go with my gratuitous Star Trek shot as the Minmus rover heads out toward there. We are getting close now, so we are decoupling our little lander. Our rover is sitting on top of a platform that when we get there, we will retro burn and land on that, and then lower our ramps and let the little rover down off of the ramps and start exploring the surface. Hopefully we have the coordinates correct, or it's going to be a long drive. But here we go, we're doing our little deorbiting retro burn and gliding in for our stop. Well, it just so happened that after searching here, it didn't seem like it was in the right place, so we lifted off and we flew a little bit closer, and then we landed a second time in a slightly closer location. Cutting it very close, we've run out of fuel, but that's okay, we have monopropellant. We'll just use our monopropellant on the little rover there to slow down and make sure that we don't crash. Lower the little ramps and then tip up the platform, decouple that rover, and let it roll down onto the surface. So yeah, we put some monopropellant on that because just in case something were to happen where it flipped over or whatnot, then we'd be able to use the monopropellant perhaps in order to right ourselves again. Also, there's a chance that we might use it ever so slightly for just a couple of maneuvers, like if we need to get up a hill or something like that. And as I recall, there was a hill where we needed that monopropellant, so it was a good thing we put it on there. Now here we go with our sensor arm. It's our sensor and solar panels arm with a little infernal robotics to lift it up. And then we deploy all of that, and we have our antenna there. We have our radio dish pointing back to Kerbin, and now we are off across the surface, scooting along on our little teeny wheels. Go, little rover, go! As you can tell, I am quite excited to find out what is at this anomaly. Are we going to find more plans for another space station? Will it be a module that attaches onto the space station? We're zooming along, and after, I don't know, it must have been a kilometer or two of driving along, we can see it in the distance. Do you see it? A little black speck on the horizon. So we're closing in on it, maybe a little bit too fast actually, had to kind of overshoot it a bit and then slowly get closer, but we realize it could be dangerous, so we back off just a little bit and then prepare to take some shots with our camera up on top of the rover that we will send back to Kerbin and give them the details of what we've found. So now we can launch a manned mission, but before we do that, in a previous episode, we had a problem with our little KSS watcher, the satellite that was orbiting around the KSS, keeping an eye on it, looking for anomalies and other things. We have the scientific instruments up there, but those aren't quite good enough. We need another KSS watcher, so rather than building one in orbit like we did last time, we're going to launch one, a bigger one. It has a really awesome camera on the front of it and a whole bunch of cool science instruments that will give us all of the details we need in case there is an anomaly around the space station. We'll be able to analyze it and send that data back to Kerbin as well. Before we get too far into the mission though, we should give it a little inspection and deploy our spatial anomaly detector here, and then go and look at the camera, make sure the camera's in operating order, pointed over toward the KSS, and see whether or not there's anything now, or at least test it out and make sure that it's operating perfectly. And there it is. There's our satellite's injection stage, so we know that it's working because we can see our things. We'll take a look back here at Kerbin. So this is going to be a pretty good camera. We should be able to see everything with this. Down here, looking, oh, we can even see the moon. So we bring the satellite in close, and now what we're going to do is orbit in a very special way. So we set our semi-major axis on the satellite to be exactly the same as the semi-major axis on the station, but they are not in the same orbit. So what this has the effect of doing is it causes the satellite to appear to orbit around the station. It comes down around the bottom of the station, then it's going to go through the dark side here. It's a little bit difficult to see, but it's going around the back side of the station, and then it comes back up around again, and then once it comes up there, it heads right back down on the same path across the front. So it's sort of like in its own 56 degree inclination orbit around the station, or at least that's what it appears to be doing. If you were inside the station, you would think that it's orbiting you, even though you're technically both orbiting Kerbin. This very special orbit will allow us to keep an eye on the station from all different angles. As it rotates around here, it'll point its camera at all the sides of the station and keep looking for those spatial anomalies and sending that data back. More science. So I guess actually in a previous episode I said we need to have more boosters and more struts, but you also need more science. So boosters, struts, and science, that's what we want. Wait, no, boosters, struts, science, and snacks. We need 4 things. Okay, so that's a successful mission. We're going to write that down and keep track of that. So now it is time to launch the S0 Truss. And this is a big one. We have special boosters on the side with extra boosters on top of those. So all kinds of boosters on this rocket. A few struts as well. And those side boosters are now firing to pull the large boosters away and keep them clear of our S0 Truss so that this can go off as a launch without a hitch at all. The first one in a while that's actually gone up without any kind of glitch. The S0 Truss is going to dock on top of the Destiny module and contains a whole bunch of equipment bays where we can store extra gear. Let's take a look here at what it looked like in our dimension when the S0 Truss was coming in and hooking up to the top of Destiny. We're skipping a few launches that happened in our dimension. We're skipping the Soyuz TM-33, the Progress M17, and among them they were launching up the little Calibri satellite as well. We're not going to show that. We're skipping over the Endeavour STS-108 launch and the Progress M18, but we are going to do the Atlantis STS-110 because that's the one that actually brought up the S0 Truss. It has 2 large docking nodes on each side of it that will be used to extend that truss and put those gigantic solar panels on in a future episode. We also have on the end of each side some monopropellant and RCS engines that will help us to position it, and we have them on both sides so that it will stay balanced as it tries to go into place. What I completely forgot about, though, was that it's very heavy and RCS does not have much thrust. So here we're going to go live and listen in as we were coming in for our docking and my son was watching me play while having a family discussion about people who don't really know how to use computers.
Problem instead of just power outage.
Yeah.
That was actually a decent joke.
That was a decent joke. Lights on in the rest house? No. Have you turned on the light switch? Yeah, but the power's out. Okay, well, there's your problem, sir.
The computer needs power. It's not magical.
Oh dear.
It's that bad.
Oh gosh, oh gosh, oh gosh, oh gosh, oh gosh, oh gosh. Oh my gosh. Oh.
hate
I
to
think
say
you're
that
past.
about her, but she really is.
There's so few frames.
Yeah. This is not good frames per second here. Indeed, if you couldn't hear right there, I was telling my son that we were getting very low frames per second. So after this docking is completed, what I had to do is go back into the saved game file and edit out the docking point. And that allowed me to get back maybe 7 to 9 frames per second. So I was able to go from the 5 that I was getting right here, maybe 5 or 6, to bringing it back up again to a nice decent 13 or so. I wouldn't say 13 is awesome, but it is at least playable, and it kinda isn't really very playable when you're down at 5 or 6 frames per second. Another thing that really helps a lot, unfortunately, is to move ships away. I think one of the problems here is while this isn't docked, it's an extra ship, and they're processing the physics, or I don't know what they're doing, but once it docked, it got a little better, and then I went out and I moved the KSS Watcher that we had just launched and put into that really cool orbit. And once that was no longer near the station and there were no other ships near the station and it was just the station, and with the docking points taken out, it was a lot better. So almost there now, here it goes. The S0 Truss is coming into place. Oh yeah, this is gonna be good. I can't wait to see it when it's got the whole truss extending out for yards, making the station bigger than an American football field. I wonder what sports the Kerbals play, and I wonder how many boosters are involved in a sport played by Kerbals. Anyway, it's time for Bob to go out and take care of all the things that need to be done now that the truss is here. And for starters, we need to get our little struts put in place to keep it locked down on top of the Destiny module. And I hope you're ready for the glitch to end all glitches. This has actually happened to me before when working with Kerbal Attachment System, but sometimes when you grab a node and you set up a link, yeah, things don't go as planned. I don't think that Bob here is very happy about what happened, but that's what quick save is for. Pressing F5 is a quick save, and holding down the F9 key will load your quick save back again. However, it happened twice, so now I'm saving very frequently and trying to get this thing hooked back up again. But don't worry, it's not done yet. It happens a third time before it stops spontaneously exploding when I grab links and try to hook them up. At least that time the station stayed intact, although I think it knocked Bob out. Actually, that looks really cool. I mean, if you're going to blow something up, it seems like that's the way to do it. So, another reload, and here we are hooking up links and pressing F5 every single time I do anything. That's actually the first time that I had to reload in this entire project, so that's not so bad, I suppose, and it's to be expected. That happens to me every now and then with Kerbal Attachment System. I highly recommend you learn to press F5 repeatedly when you are doing your own. So now, at first I was thinking I was going to put an endpoint in between the S0 Truss and down into the Z, but even though that's, I think, something that happens in real life, I didn't want to have extra parts out there. So I think it's time to start pulling parts off. It's been pretty cool, it's been fun, but we're getting too many parts, and it's time to clear a few away and put them away so that when that Hydra cargo carrier decouples and deorbits someday, they will be gone. Alright, well, with everything now in place, Bob can do a little bit of spin before he goes back inside, and then we'll decouple our little tugs, I guess I'd call them, little space tugs, docked to the two sides of the S0, and we are going to take those and use their monopropellant and RCS, and with that itty bitty tiny thrust right there, we will slowly make our way back into a suborbital trajectory where we can crash those in deadly reentry's atmosphere. Okay, so the S0 Truss. So this thing, when we launched it in our dimension, it weighed almost 14 tons. It was 13.5 meters long or so. And for me, when I scale that into the 60% scale that I'm using for the KSS, it means that it's supposed to be about 8 meters long. Unfortunately, though, I couldn't really come up with a great way of doing that because I wanted to put it nice and evenly spaced with 4 meters on either side of a single plate that I could use for where the docking node went. So that meant that it had to be about 9 meters long. So it's a little bit longer, relatively speaking, to the real one. And when you add the docking nodes on the end, I suppose that actually also makes it just a slightly larger than even that. But here we are taking another look at the KSS with its newly added S0 Truss, and it's looking pretty. With this, we've brought ourselves up to the events of April 2002 in our dimension, where we have had the 3rd and 4th crew transfer, and we have completed 26 of the 143 missions, as well as 38 of the 175 EVAs. Actually, I suppose what we're really doing is right now we're doing the next mission. Endeavour. The Space Shuttle Endeavour came up, it transferred another crew, so it was another 6 months or so later. And it also repositioned the arm, the Kanadarm, up onto the MBS, which I had to launch on the S0 Truss because there was just no way I was going to be able to get that to be attached after we had already put it into place. So I launched it with that little rail that you can see on there already on it. That real rail on the ISS, it is capable of moving 116 tons. However, it has a top speed of about 2.5 centimeters per second. So it's not very fast, but it can definitely move stuff around fairly well. So now it's time for Bob to grab a box and get up there and take some more parts away. We will no longer be needing those RCS ports or the antenna or the batteries or anything like that, because the arm is where the arm is going to stay. So we can finally deorbit all of that junk as well. Well, we are almost done. In the next episode, we are going to be trying to put on the S1 Truss, which will be a radiator extension truss that goes out to the starboard side. And perhaps we'll find out a little bit about Joseph Kerman, because you see he was spotted in the Badlands by some of our agents, and when we went to try to capture him, he was able to elude our investigators and our team. However, we did find his workshop, and we raided his workshop and found a bunch of wires and electronic devices, so he must have been up to something. We're not sure what he was building, but we're going to take a look into that, and maybe we'll be able to track him down. Until next time, I'll see you later, Kerbonauts.